Hello and welcome to another Showdown Breakdown Halloween edition. Joe Burrow at Jacoby Brissett. AFC North battle tonight on Monday Night Football. As always, joined by Cody Main and Gary Hartman. Cody, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. I, like you, have had the unprotected sex, so I will be taking a couple of young kids around trick-or-treating throughout the neighborhood, so can't wait for that to inevitably ruin my pre-lock rituals.
I hate every holiday. Every holiday is just each one is worse than the previous one. New Year's, Thanksgiving, every holiday is just July 4th. They're all awful. There's one good holiday. It's Halloween. Actually makes you feel happy to be alive. I have my Jerry costume tonight, which I'll be wearing. A few beers in the streets as we trick or treat. Halloween is the best, man. The only good holiday. Gary, happy Halloween.
Yeah, I respect the take. I think I subconsciously wore orange today. I didn't even realize it was Halloween when I woke up. So I am not in the kid stage quite yet in my life. In fact, going to be grinding NBA decimal points this evening. So one of our other coworkers on the NBA team could take his kids out to trick or treat because I'm that's the kind of guy I am. Let other people enjoy this holiday while I will be grinding some NBA stuff. But first, pumped to talk this AFC North matchup with you guys.
Yes, exactly. We got a comment from Huge Erection here. He says, "I've got 4 kids. It gets wild." Before we get into it here, want to remind everyone, as Gary mentioned, NBA is in full swing. Go up to the NBA tab here. You see everything we have going on with props, with DFS. It has been all-out war, and the guys are absolutely crushing in both streets right now.
It's been a fun start to the season.
Really has been a fun start to the NBA season. This game here tonight, I think, is shaped by 2 questions. Cody, how do the Bengals play without Jamar Chase in terms of personnel, micro, and then macro? Do they change their offensive game plan because they no longer have one of the best wide receivers in the entire NFL? To me, that shapes this entire thing, how this game is going to go, because the last few weeks we have seen them go absolutely nuclear with their pass rate, which is what they should be doing. In this game, without Jamar Chase against the really weak Cleveland rush defense, our take and projection, which we'll get to, is that they're going to be much more neutral this week. Cody, how are you thinking about the Bengals without Jamar Chase in this game as a whole?
Yeah, I agree with the projections. I agree with a lot of smart people around the industry that are suggesting that the elite pass rate over expectation over the last couple of weeks is more a result of matchup related stuff and them having the right personnel to make it happen. Now you have Jamar Chase out. Now you have a Cleveland defense that has kind of been a little bit more of a run funnel, is not as efficient against the run. And I think this sets up divisional matchup, could get really ugly. I think this sets up as a spot for them to really lean on the ground game, try and keep Joe Burrow upright, quick passes. And we do see something closer to kind of a neutral game plan from Zach Taylor. So I'm not expecting them to go out and have a 23% pass rate over expectation like they did last week or the week before against the Saints. But all that might not matter because this whole Bengals offense is priced as if Jamar Chase is healthy, and we know that he's not. So it might not matter. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, all these guys that we'll get to in a second might still be able to get there and beat their price tag expectations just because the slate was priced the way that it was.
Right. And so salaries came out before the Jamar Chase news was out, I guess, is the deal. Although it seems like they had plenty of time here. Do you think they just fell asleep? I mean, it seems like they had time to set the salaries right here before Jamar Chase's injury.
Well, that was my question. I take these one day at a time, so I have no idea when salaries were released, but it seemed like there was plenty of time to get this out before the Monday night contests were up. And as you can see there in the roster construction breakdown, going to be so much 4-2, even a ton of 5-1, 5 Cincy, 1 Cleveland tonight, just because of the way that pricing shakes out. You get all of these guys on the Bengals side of the ball are extremely, extremely cheap.
Yeah, it's interesting. We never see this much 5-1. Like 5-1 is normally single digits. You see there 5 Cincinnati, 1 Brown. We're projecting at 21%. That's massive, and that flows back through to what Cody's talking about with the salaries. Let's start at quarterback here, Gary. And Joe Burrow is so good, man. And it's hard. It's been hard for our model, and we have both guys in here that have broken the model, essentially. Nick Chubb has broken the model. Joe Burrow has broken the model. In other words, when Joe Burrow has 5 400-yard, 3 touchdown pass games in his first 33 NFL starts, I mean, that is like so far outlier. It's hard for the model to capture that. Similar to Nick Chubb, who averages 6.5 yards per carry and scores a touchdown on 10% of his touches, which is completely absurd, but he does it every week, seemingly. So the model has a hard time with that. I just want to put that out there to start. I think it's going to be a more run-heavy game plan. It does not mean Joe Burrow can't get there. Obviously, Burrow benefits from these plays where Jamar Chase gets a 10-yard slant and goes to the house. So that's a downgrade for Burrow as well, not just the pass rate, but what can his guys do after catch? What do you think about quarterbacks tonight, Gary? I believe you're on mute, Gary.
I always forget to unmute after the sirens in New York. I'll say great comparison, the Burrow Chubb thing. I think the first time you said it, I was like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. These are two outlier performers at their position, but I think we have to just take into account what their history is rather than what the model might spit out. So that said, I'm with you. It makes all the sense in the world for this to be more of a run-heavy approach for Cincinnati tonight. He is without Jamar Chase, and we're still getting around 70% total ownership, which isn't like that outlandish for someone of Burrow's ceiling. Like we saw what Lamar came through with last week and things like that. I'm fine coming in around the field. I wouldn't take a major stand on Burrow either way. I want plenty of exposure in my flex. I want plenty of exposure in my captain spot. I'm not too worried about the Chase thing as far as that's concerned. He still has a great weaponry there. I mean, Hayden Hurst looks good. Obviously, Mixon's showed himself to be competent in the past game. And I'm kind of into Mike Thomas, who we'll talk about here as well. But I think that because of the matchup, the situational, running approach that we're expecting them to take, and the loss of Chase makes me just say, okay, I think the field is a good place to be for Burrow tonight.
Yeah, my take is that Burrow is a little bit overpriced for what I think his output is going to be here, Cody. But that doesn't really matter because in Showdown, like we're playing guys relative to other guys in the game. In other words, like Joe Burrow is still really likely to be one of the highest scorers in the game. It's not like a main slate where it's like, well, I think they're going to run more. They don't have Chase. Let me just put up Joe Burrow fade here on the main slate. I don't think you can do that in Showdown, right? Even if you think Joe Burrow is too expensive, he's probably still a good bet to be in the optimal, right? How do you think about Burrow and Brissett?
Yeah, and there's a few things that kind of counteract the 11-4 price tag. I think 11-4 is probably a bit steep for Joe Burrow, especially in this projected game, game script, game environment that we have his base projection at right now. I think 11-4 is a bit steep, but again, like you kind of mentioned, it really doesn't matter because if you think he's one of the top 6 overall scorers in this specific game, which is really what we're looking at, then it really doesn't matter. You're going to want him in there or likely need him if he's even close. So the way that I'm thinking about this, because the way the salaries are set up, and it's so easy to fit these guys up at the top. And we have a starting wide receiver who's $1,200, who we'll get to in a second. It's really going to make almost any roster construction work. And the salary-based ownership projections that I look at, it's going to be really easy to build lineups. It's going to be really easy to leave money on the table today. So I think that could inflate Joe Burrow's ownership at both the flex and captain tonight. I think at captain, I want to come in under, especially if I kind of assume a 13.7% captain projection is a baseline for him, and it could come in closer to 15, maybe even push 20% because we've got all the money in the world tonight. Then I want to come in under that. I'll take my shots on some of these running backs and pass catchers that I think have equally high ceiling and may come in with less ownership. But I think in flex, he's kind of not to the point of like a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson necessity, but he's pretty darn close. And I think for sure in cash, you want Joe Burrow in your lineups. On the other side with Brissett, I think I would much rather you have two guys that we can fit the price tags on in Chubb and in Amari Cooper, who have really voluminous roles. And I think I would rather take my shots there in cash. I will be prioritizing Brissett, i.e. boosting his base projection in runs when I have a Cleveland pass catcher, a captain, or when rostering multiple Cleveland pass catchers at flex. So that's how I'll try and get my Jacoby Brissett exposure tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen like the Dalton slate. What was that? The Cardinals Saints game where not a lot of people played Andy Dalton. It was like, oh, he's Andy Dalton, doesn't have any weapons. Quarterbacks in these things are valuable. It's hard. Even if you think Jacoby Brissett sucks, can't get there. Like I find big fades on quarterback to be tough for me, especially on these slates where we have a ton of money, even if you think Burrow and Brissett are both kind of overpriced, which I think that they are. We got a question about Denzel Ward shadowing T. Higgins. Denzel Ward is out with a concussion here in this game. Wyatt Teller is also out, the guard for the Browns. Greedy Williams is questionable. And then I was looking for, there, Clowney's going to play. So Clowney's good. Okay. Let's go to running back. So to me, like in a main slate setup here, if Joe Burrow was like 6,500 to 7K, I'd be interested in Joe Mixon here at that price on a main slate in this matchup with this role without Chase. I think that we're going to see way more runs because it makes sense for the matchup and because they don't have Jamar Chase. Joe Mixon also can play really well in the pass game, and Joe Burrow is very good at throwing to running backs as well. I think if anything, we're light Mixon here because I feel like a lot of people, in terms of ownership, I think a lot of people are going to think the same way that I do. And then on the other side, you have Nick Chubb, who 10,400 is a lot for a running back who shares carries and doesn't catch passes. But like I said, it is outlier what Nick Chubb is able to do. I'll give you the start here, Cody. What do you think about running backs tonight? And I'm sure people are going to be interested in Kareem Hunt and P. Ryan also.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of just going to lean into this narrative that we expect a little bit more of a run-centric game plan from Zach Taylor tonight. I think it all kind of sets up to go that way. They're 3 to 3.5 point favorites wherever you look, and without Chase, I think this is a really good spot for them to kind of get back to a little bit more of a neutral game plan here. They're facing a Cleveland defense that's faced the league's fourth lowest pass rate, a team that's not facing a ton of passing attempts over expectation, and they rank dead last in rush EPA per play, 29th in explosive rush rate allowed. All signs are kind of pointing to like, hey, let's get Joe Mixon going, and he's got a sick role. I mean, the role for Joe Mixon is truly elite. He's top 5 in most categories in the entire league in terms of rushing share, in terms of red zone rushing share, attempts inside the 5-yard line, target share. I just think this is a game where Mixon is going to get peppered with opportunities, and I kind of want to lean into that. So I know ownership's probably going to come up from the 56.4% that we have, probably maybe closer to 15%-ish captain ownership. I think I'm okay with those numbers, and I'll just find ways to get unique elsewhere. On the other side, if this is just kind of an ugly back and forth old school AFC North type brawl, you could still see Chubb get in there, even if Mixon has one of those, optimal captain type performances. I think I'm going to lean into that on the other side as well, and just kind of play into this game being a little bit more of a rock fight, maybe coming in underweight on some of these pass catchers, which is always a scary proposition, but playing this game for kind of the run heavy nature that it sets up to be.
Gary, I'm not sure if you saw the Kareem Hunt stuff yesterday morning. Schefter actually went out of his way to write an article on Sunday morning, not just a tweet. He wrote an article saying Kareem Hunt, the Browns are now open to trading Kareem Hunt. And they didn't even, normally when these teams leak this stuff to the media, they're like, give me a first rounder for Cam Akers or there's no deal, which is like obviously completely absurd. They're just trying to negotiate in the media. This report was, hey, Browns are willing to trade Kareem Hunt. They're asking for a 4th rounder. It seems reasonable to me. Maybe they get a 5th rounder or a conditional 4th or something, and the deal actually gets done. The narrative can go both ways. Are you showcasing Kareem Hunt for a trade tonight, or are you not playing him because you want to protect him and not let him get hurt right before you're about to get a pick for him? We did just bet the under on Kareem Hunt carries. We took under 9.5 carries on Kareem Hunt. We have him for around 8 carries here in this game, but we're doing a lot of speculating based on this trade stuff. Any thoughts on that? Or any other running back thoughts, Gary?
Yeah, my gut would be the latter, that they want to protect him, or if they are ready to move on here. I mean, most of the league, most front offices have had plenty of Kareem Hunt tape, right? We know what Kareem Hunt is. He's a very good running back. The running back that would be running back 1 on probably more than half the teams in the NFL. We saw what he was in Kansas City. I don't know if he's a little bit past that high, but we know he's a really good pass catcher. He's a good player. I don't think that they need to roll him out there for a showcase here. So my guess is if they are gung-ho, and as you mentioned, the Schefter article is an interesting just a piece of this that they went out of their way to make that happen, then I would think that maybe we do get a little bit of a lesser role from Hunt here tonight. That we maybe get even more Chubb carries. Maybe those 18 go, squeeze into the 20 to 22 range. Maybe Dearness Johnson gets involved here a little bit. So that's where I'm at. Dearness Johnson's 200. He would make my MME pool as a punt just to play into that narrative a bit. But I think Chubb's a great play. And I just want to touch on Mixon. I think Mixon should be close to a lock in cash given the matchup and everything we know. And I get price might make that a little bit tough. But I think there are ways to flip the build with using Mixon plenty as well. So I think you could play into the Bengals pass narrative more than the field will and just include Mixon in those stacks, do different things like that. Because I don't want to fade Mixon either, but if he's going to get so steamed up where everyone's playing into this, and then maybe the Bengals pass catchers will come in a little on their own, I'd rather play those kind of guys together in my Bengals heavy stuff.
By the way, Dearness Johnson has only played 10 snaps all year. He played 0 snaps last week. They've hardly used him. He is a good NFL player and or a reasonable NFL player and a very good XFL/USFL player. It's hard to include him when he's played 10 snaps all year, but in lineups where you think Kareem Hunt is rested for a trade or whatever, the trade deadline is tomorrow. So, I mean, if they're going to do it, they could do it today. Maybe Dearness Johnson does make some sense there. News maybe comes out after lock or something that Kareem Hunt's not going to play. I could see that being at least possible. Wide receiver is where a lot of value is going to be on the Cincinnati side, Cody, because obviously Jamar Chase is out. And as you said, prices have not adjusted. Now, my take on this is T. Higgins has certainly benefited from all of the attention that Jamar Chase draws. I still think T. Higgins is a very, very, very good player. I still think he's an alpha. But if somebody wants to come up to me and say, hey, Adam, T. Higgins is going to see crazy defensive attention in this game, he's not going to be as good as he's been on a yard per target basis, on an efficiency basis, maybe I can get behind that. I can also get behind the Bengals going to throw less without Jamar Chase. So there's two negatives for T. Higgins, but they should see a much higher target share, pushing towards 25, 30%. Similarly for Tyler Boyd, who already was playing a ton, but he was third in first read looks. Tyler Boyd was like an afterthought. Still think he's a very, very good player, was a very good prospect in Pennsylvania and player at Pitt as well. I actually remember him when he was in high school, which is crazy to think about. But anyways, Higgins and Boyd, I think, are going to be very popular and for good reason with very good roles. They're clearly underpriced here. And then we have the Michael Thomas situation. We expect Mike Thomas to be the guy in 3 wide receiver sets. Cody, how confident do you feel about the Mike Thomas versus Trent Taylor stuff and anything else on what's going on without Jamar Chase here?
Yeah, I think that Mike Thomas is the guy that's going to slide into the wide receiver 3 role just immediately. We expect this team to still play a bunch of 3 wide receiver sets, so I think he's going to be out there quite a bit. Obviously hasn't played a ton this season, but the targets per route run stuff is pretty low. Now that might come up obviously with less target competition now on the field. I would expect that maybe to settle in 10, 11, 12% or thereabouts. But the $1,200 price tag is going to make him pretty close to a cash game lock just because of what else he allows you to do. You make an interesting argument. I'm starting to kind of lean into this a little bit now too, especially with T. Higgins being the most owned, projected to be the most owned player on the slate at both flex and captain. I read Pat Crane's walkthrough, hearing you talk now, like maybe the bump that he gets in target rate is counteracted by potentially seeing more double coverage, potentially being a little less efficient on his targets, and the fact that this game might just tend to be a little bit more run heavy. I think that this T. Higgins ownership could creep up to 70% total, 20% captain. There, I think I would want to come in underweight, but I mean, he just sets up as such a phenomenal play from a baseline where he's priced at 8K. Even at 8K with Jamar Chase in, he would have been underpriced. Now you have Jamar Chase out. 25% of the team's targets is probably like a floor for him in this matchup. But I'm starting to see paths where he could get peppered and still just not be quite enough to hit a winning lineup at 70% ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I think the double coverage stuff gets overrated a lot. In other words, like there wasn't pure double teams. They weren't like have 2 guys in Jamar Chase's face. It's like, which side is the safety lean towards? Well, the safety leans towards Jamar Chase's side, like obviously. And so you're going to see more of that on T. Higgins. But, I think a lot of that stuff gets overrated. Hayden Hurst is also certainly in the mix here. I think as long as Jamar Chase is out, we can safely project a target bump for Hayden Hurst, who I actually think has played really well this year. On the other side, I mean, these Amari Cooper showdown slates, it's like nobody, I guess we have 42% here, but it seems like Amari Cooper is often under-owned on both main slates and showdown, just relative to talent. Like, let's line up the most talented wide receivers in the NFL, guys who can make incredible plays, get open at will, have ridiculous ceilings. Amari Cooper is going to be in the mix there. So I always like having Amari Cooper prominently in these kind of slates. Gary, any thoughts? Oh, another big injury in this game. There's a lot of them, man. Harrison Bryant would have been a min tight end punt that I probably would have played if he was on the main slate for like 3K or 3,100. We get him here at 4K in Showdown. Harrison Bryant, former Mackey Award winner, will be playing the David Njoku role tonight. I think he will be very popular as well at 4K, maybe even more than the 21% we have there. We'll see there. But Gary, anything on Browns pass catchers?
Yeah, I think Cooper's a really strong tournament play tonight. We saw him already do it once in primetime. And by the way, I didn't get the comment number set. I think he's going to be a little under-owned as well, just as a quarterback that they are building some sort of chemistry. The Browns are very up and down so far this year, and obviously they want to lean on Chubb. But I think assuming Chubb's going to get a ton of ownership, and Amari right now at what do we got? Total captain ownership of a little under 8%. Total ownership of 42%, around the same as Tyler Boyd. Like, I get we saw a Tyler Boyd ceiling game last week, but to me, these ceilings, like a weekly ceiling is not really comparable between Tyler Boyd and Amari Cooper, in my opinion. Amari Cooper is a big play alpha receiver. Boyd's still a slot guy that's going to get there on volume. He can break a couple away like we saw last week, but I'd rather Amari Cooper every day of the week, even at 1,200 more. So I'm into Cooper here as a tournament play. I think it's good. I think I'm into both these tight ends a lot. I think actually 28 for Hurst, 21 for Bryant's a little under what it should be given the situations of both those past games right now. Obviously, no Jamar Chase, no Njoku over there. We can always lean into an MF and Mackey Award winner and Harrison Bryant. So I don't know if I would use them in captain, but I think if I was 150ing, I would sprinkle in some tight end captain stuff tonight and maybe try to get like 5%, be a little over the field, because I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, they both certainly will have red zone role, and we've seen this team use tight end. Both these teams use tight end in red zone a ton.
Yep.
Kicker and defense, I feel like is going to be somewhat popular tonight, Cody, although people don't need the money. So maybe they won't be as popular, because it's like a lot of times kicker and defense, I feel like, get popular because people are compare them to these other dust balls that are 4K. On this slate, we don't really need the money. What do you think about kicker and defense?
Yeah, I had the same thought when I pulled up the slate. At first glance, thought Evan McPherson, we're going to see another 30% total ownership or more, and we're going to see 2 to 3% captain ownership again. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case, because after going through builds and after running ownership, I just don't think you really need the salary, which will make them a little bit stronger plays, in my opinion, at 20 and 23% respective ownership. I think we can make stronger cases for them there, and as ways to just kind of flip the build. If you don't want to roster the $1,200 Mike Thomas, if you don't want to go down that far for some of these punts on the Cincy side that make the builds work, you can pay up a little bit and pay up to be contrarian a little bit with these kickers, and then maybe drop down from the Joe Burrows of the world and kind of settle in with some of these 7 and 8K guys that will also be a little bit underowned. So I think as a means to flip the build a little bit, you can settle in as like 4-6 and 4-4 for Evan McPherson, and Cade York is like your cheapest option on tonight's slate.
Yeah, I actually like that. I actually, at this total ownership for both defense and kickers tonight, I actually think that they are very much in play in a game where I could certainly see some underperformance from both offenses. All right, let's get to as many questions as we can here in the next 5 minutes or so before we get to the flag plans. Andrew says, what role do you think Trent Taylor has? We have him as the 4th wide receiver for the Bengals here. Gary, any hope for Trent Taylor somehow ending up in the optimal at 200?
Yeah, he's definitely a guy that should be thrown into pools at 200 there. We know Mike Thomas is 3rd on that depth chart right now. But if they ever do have to go 4 wide, if he's just rotating in, it takes, at 200, it doesn't need much to be optimal if that's kind of the way that the salary breaks out. If all these other studs are getting there and he's the 200 guy that you need, kind of like those punt tight ends we see all the time. I don't see why not for Trent Taylor. I mean, you can make the same argument, I guess. On the other side, we have Anthony Schwartz for a projection. I'd rather lean into the uncertainty of the Jamar Chase-less receiver room on Trent Taylor, though.
Yeah. Jason says the Bengals come out in 3 wide as often when they go run heavy. And this was something I was thinking too. Without Jamar Chase and in this specific matchup, do we see more 2 tight end out of the Bengals here, get a blocking tight end in there with Hayden Hurst and really try to establish it? I think that's at least possible. Obviously, they're going to be in 3 wide plenty. All NFL teams are in 3 wide plenty, but maybe not 90% of the time, maybe not 80% of the time, maybe it's 70% of the time tonight or less. They're in 3 wide. Any thoughts there, Cody? And would that put you onto any Pirine stuff, at least for the lotto? I feel like Pirine has to at least be in the mix.
Yeah, I think there's 2 paths that they can go. If they don't feel really comfortable trotting out Mike Thomas for 70 to 75% of the team snaps, they can bring in Mitchell Wilcox to be a blocking tight end and kind of feature the other guys as their prominent pass catchers. Or they, as you kind of alluded to, they could go double running back there, and they could feature Mixon a little bit more as a pass or feature Pirine a little bit more as a pass catcher out of the backfield. In those respects, Pirine is finally priced down to a showdown point where I think he does kind of qualify for that so bad it's good play. Before, I think last time we talked Bengals, he was like 7,600 or something absurd. At 4,800, like a couple of drives of Pirine could certainly get you there. And certainly if we expect them to be a little bit more run heavy than in games past, just because Mixon has this role doesn't mean they're going to force feed him 30 touches in a run heavy game plan. So I like P. Ryan. I would be negatively boosting or docking him in lineups that has Mixon, but I won't be outright excluding it.
Which Brown to prioritize in cash, Chubb, Brissett, or Amari? My default in cash is to play both quarterbacks. And I don't think there's a huge edge, by the way, in Showdown cash. I think the teams are the top like 10 teams are all going to be so close to each other. It's gonna be really tight. I typically try to play both quarterbacks. I think the Chubb fade is difficult though in cash, even at his price. I don't know if you've looked at any teams yet, Cody, but what do you think about the Browns core guys in cash?
Yeah, I think I looked at the optimal, and it might surprise you. It's a 5-1. It's 5 Bengals. You get all the Bengals guys that you need, and then you run it back with Amari. And that was our optimal. I would not play something like that in cash. I just think there's too much inherent risk there. If the Bengals struggle, if they just go a little bit more run heavy than we may even have projected, then I think you end up with a team that's got a lot of downside. If you're looking for just one Brown to prioritize, I think I lean with Adam. I'm almost always going to side with the quarterback. So I think it's Jacoby. I don't think it's a necessity. If you flipped any one of those guys, I would not scoff at that. But like you alluded to, Adam, they're all so close in Showdown.
Yeah, and I mean Chubb is expensive. I would play around with what I could get, when I play Chubb. But yeah, I mean, typically quarterback is better.
You could do 5-1s with Chubb as well in cash. That would be like a mixing captain with McPherson and Thomas in there or something like that, and you get Chubb on the bring back.
George says, any ways I can make my lineups more chalky so they hit? For subscribers, we just did the GPP review show with Leone. He is a broken man, a depressed and broken man. George making the inside baseball joke here as main slate. The most underpriced plays, the best plays on main slate have absolutely been smashing. Den says, is Boyd going to lose snaps in 2 wide receiver sets since he's mainly a slot guy? I don't think so. I think Boyd's more than capable of playing outside. He's just been kind of pegged as a slot guy here for his role in Cincy. I would not worry about that at all. I think Boyd will play in 2 sets. What changes if we get a surprise Hunt inactive or news like that he won't play much? That was the Dearness Johnson stuff. If you think that's the case, if you get word that's the case, if you hear anything about it, I think playing Dearness Johnson at 200 makes a lot of sense. The problem is on this slate, you don't even need the 2. Like, oh, great, I only spent 200 on Dearness Johnson. Like, now what am I going to do? Well, now I'm going to run into like all the most expensive plays, which maybe is right, but yeah, it's not a slate where you actually like need the 200. All right. Last one from Bo Johnson. Thoughts on DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones? He's a guy that I took a ton in best ball in like the last round, and the thought was just like, he can make big plays and he'll get Deshaun Watson back late in the year. I thought he's been okay this year, DPJ, and probably taken a little bit of a leap forward in terms of his play. Any interest in him tonight, Cody?
Yeah, he's had some big target games. I mean, in terms of target rate, you still need, I think, a game in which the Browns are forced to drop back more often. So I'm probably playing him alongside Jacoby Brissett, but he's had games of 27, 23, 25% target share. Is the guy that's often targeted down the field. And as I often talk about in these Showdown breakdowns, like when you can get those guys at low ownership is a great time to target that type of archetype. And I think he's going to be, relatively low owned on this slate. And I think the price tag makes sense in certain builds.
All right. Let's get to the portion of the program everybody's been waiting for, the flagging, the plants, the planting of the flags. Gary, I'll give you the honors here.
Oh, boy. Ah, man. Last time we did a Browns Showdown slate, I got to flag plant my boy and David Njoku, who was one of my better ones of the season. I think I'll make Evan Silva proud and go with Harrison Bryant right back in that same role. He's very, very sorry, my wife just is sending me things in all caps. Hope everything is okay. He's very affordable. I like the role. I just excited to go right back to the tight end. Well, got to try to double down on my stuff. So, yeah.
All right. Harrison Bryant. It is for Gary. Cody, you're up.
We're going to double up on Browns pass catchers in one of the league's most run-heavy offenses in a game that projects to be a little bit more run-heavy than normal. I'm going to Amari Cooper. I think the $7,600 price tag, where he's so closely priced to T. Higgins, you can really pay up if you want to, because you've got all the salary in the world to get up to Mixon, to get up to Chubb. I think Amari Cooper is going to come in less owned than he should be. We've seen these alpha target games from him when the Browns have needed it in the first couple of games of his career as a Brown. And I think we get another one of those games where they fall behind a little bit earlier than they would hope, and they need to lean on Amari Cooper as a pass catcher. So give me Amari Cooper, optimal captain tonight.
Amari Cooper for Cody. Andrew wants to know, Gary, is your wife unhappy with your flag plant? Is that what the text was about? She said, no Harrison Bryant flag plant.
It's got to be that. Yeah.
It's got to be that. All right. I will go with a guy I've been following since he was literally in high school. I don't think there's a huge gap in opportunity here between T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. I do think I know T. Higgins is more expensive, and I know he'll be way more owned than Tyler Boyd here. Tyler Boyd, I think, has gotten somewhat of a bad rap, pegged as like a slot guy who can't play. He just happens to have two very good wide receivers on his team, and he is better in the slot than them. And that's kind of just how it's gone for Tyler Boyd's career. Still think he is a very, very, very good player. Even if Jamar Chase was playing in this game, I would be interested in Tyler Boyd at 6,400 without Jamar Chase, and now Tyler Boyd in two wide receiver sets. I'm going to go ahead with him. Just an unbelievable high school and college career for Tyler Boyd in the state of Pennsylvania. He didn't go to Penn State though, so he really should be on my shit list, but he's not. Anyways, Tyler Boyd for me. All right. Boyd would be number one on Green Bay. No doubt. That's not saying a lot, but no doubt. All right. That's going to do it for this Showdown breakdown. Enjoy Halloween tonight. Enjoy the game. Go out there and get some money. We do have a goal of 30,000 YouTube subscribers before the end of the year. Would really appreciate if you guys can hit the subscribe button. If you're watching this, helps us get there, helps us keep this content free going forward. For Cody, for Gary, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.